A hopeless romantic by the name of Stensland falls in love with an older woman but gets heartbroken when he finds out that she's married. In the opening scene, we see the protagonist Stensland, a tall, slim, ginger guy who is very sensitive. He doesn't want to believe that Morgan is actually married, despite her convincing him. Getting the ring out of the drawer, she tries to prove a point, but he still doesn't believe it because there are no signs of a marriage in the house. Morgan explains that her husband Grady doesn't like artifacts, so they don't have any wedding memories around. Still not believing her, he goes to the closet to confirm that she doesn't have any male clothes around, but he gets proven wrong. Shocked, he exits the closet and starts screaming at Morgan. He can't believe that she did that to him. He had fallen in love with her despite them hooking up for 2 days only. Morgan thanks him for the wonderful 2 days but lets him know that they won't be seeing each other anymore. Stensland doesn't want to accept that and does ridiculous things out of anger. Taking the robe from the ground, he dramatically wipes his behind and exits. Coming out of the house, he starts sobbing like a baby, crying all the way to the place he usually goes, which is Soft Solutions Fine Furniture. He goes there every day and sits on the furniture to make himself feel better. After collecting himself, he heads back home where his landlord meets him. She is an old Spanish lady that doesn't know English and is always yelling at him, despite his not understanding. Stensland tells her off and suggests she stops yelling because he doesn't understand her either way. Coming into his apartment, he heads directly to the bathroom, where he holds a motivational speech to himself in front of the mirror. You're not the smartest, you're not the coolest, you're not the best looking, but god damn it, you are something. You've got something that attracts people. You've got something that attracts the ladies. They don't know what it is, you don't know what it is, but it's there, cocooned, growing and learning. And one day, you'll bloom into a big, beautiful condor that people will respect and fear. I can't believe that it used to be Stensland, they'll say. I can't believe that used to be Stensland. This is what he has written on the wall, and what he repeats to himself every day. To ease his pain and heal his heartbreak, Stensland put on Dawson's Creek. He lights up his bong when his roommate sits next to him. He notices that Stensland is not looking great, so he asks him whether there's something wrong. He opens his heart and claims that he wants a relationship, he wants a girlfriend and the highs and lows of it. If the heartbreak from Morgan wasn't enough, his roommate lets him know that he will be moving out a week from then and suggests that he should find a new roommate. A week goes by and Stensland can be noticed watching Dawson's Creek. His roommate walks in and notices the mess. He can't believe that Stensland is mourning his intercourse with Morgan, but Stensland claims that he is mourning about what they could have been. He hasn't gone to work the whole week and claims that he is on self-proclaimed leave. Hearing that makes his roommate go crazy and he starts pushing Stensland to go back to work. He finally agrees and heads to the antique shop. Getting there, he goes behind the counter and acts as if nothing had happened. His boss notices him and goes over to hand him the last payment. Stensland starts begging him to forgive him when another guy comes from the back of the shop. Shocked, Stensland asks who the guy is and his boss tells him that it is the new Stensland. Unfortunately, he gets kicked out of the shop as his boss doesn't want to give him another chance. Angry, he decides that Morgan is the source of his problems, so he heads to her office to make his voice heard. Walking in without a care, he gets chased by the assistant. Morgan sees that he has come to talk, so she tries to keep it down low. He lets Morgan know that he loves her and assumes that she loves him as well, claiming that he doesn't mind her being married. He begs her to continue their dirty little secret when he sees a picture of her and her husband. He gets an idea all of a sudden. Sitting down, he demands $15,000 or he would tell Grady himself. Morgan is shocked, but she doesn't let it get to her because Stensland has no evidence. He claims that he has evidence of passion and proceeds to mimic her action while they had intercourse. Kiss me between my shoulder blades, Stensland. And remember this. Rub my behind like this when you're going down on me, Stensland. These are some of the things he mentions that make Morgan realize that she's in trouble. Trying to play it cool, she pretends like she had told Grady and claims that they will work it out. She lets Stensland know that he was her revenge puppet because she was angry at Grady. Almost believing her, Stensland gets up and demands his money once more because he knows that she hasn't told him anything. Opening the door, he sees the assistant Hannah eavesdropping. Hannah is an attractive young brunette with chocolate brown eyes. She lets Morgan know that she's heard everything and Morgan is honest with her. She lets her know that she has slept with Stensland because she was at a low point in her life. Later at night, Stensland anxiously walks back and forth with the phone in his hand. He calls Grady and lets him know that a lowlife like him has slept with his wife and she hadn't informed him about her marriage. To his surprise, Grady claims that she had told him and because of that he will find Stensland and kill him. Stensland is terrified, so he goes to a bar next to his building to hide. He makes one of the women he hangs out with check the building every hour, so he knows what's going on. Luckily for him, she doesn't see anyone wandering around. But little does he know that there is a surprise waiting for him at his apartment. Having a blast with the ladies, Stensland comes back home drunk. He tries to turn on the TV when Grady appears, pointing a gun at him. Stensland begs, but Grady pulls the trigger. Falling to the ground crying, Stensland realizes that he is alive, and Grady laughs, claiming that the gun was just to mess with him. Grady plans to mess him up by beating him, to which Stensland starts crying even harder and begs Grady not to touch him. Looking around, Grady makes a look of disgust and lets Stensland know that his apartment looks like a cargo hold of a pirate ship. He also mentions that it smells bad, but Stensland claims that it smells manly. Finding a can of a bunion, Grady is amazed as it brings him back to his childhood. He sits on the bathroom sink enjoying his snack while Stensland's showering after peeing his pants from fear. Stensland admits to not knowing that she's married and asks him why he cheated on her. Grady claims that he didn't cheat on her, but she picked up a scent on one of his shirts and accused him of cheating. Stensland feels his pain and supports Grady in that matter. Grady finally starts feeling appreciated. After showering, he helps him put his pajamas on and tucks him into bed, completely discarding the fact that he was supposed to beat him up. Stensland wakes up the next morning with a hangover. However, he hears some fumbling in the living room, so he decides to see what's happening. Coming out, he sees the apartment completely clean and a suitcase by the entrance door. In the kitchen is Grady preparing breakfast. He wishes Stensland a good morning and asks how he wants his eggs. Enjoying his scrambled eggs, Stensland finds out that Grady had left Morgan temporarily. However, he can't believe what he's hearing when Grady tells him that he will be living in the apartment with him. Grady claims that he needs a vacation from everything, and Morgan's unfaithfulness has made him realize that. He now agrees with Stensland that the apartment is a manly apartment. He is tired of all the fancy hotels and food as he wants to be a manly man. Morgan had prevented that for him as she doesn't let him eat in bed or sit around in his work clothes. He feels free in Stensland's apartment. He feels like he can do anything, like freeball on the couch or eat chili fries in the filthy shower. Binge drinking is also one of the things he can do without being judged and without having Morgan around to boss him. Stensland understands him but is confused as to why he doesn't get his own apartment. He thinks it would be better for him instead of staying there. Grady claims that the part about living together is the genius part. He believes that Morgan would lose her mind if she finds out they're living together, and that's what makes him excited. He claims he'll pay the rent and all other expenses, so Stensland shakes his hand in agreement. Sitting in the living room, they watch TV when Grady proposes they go out for some lunch. They go to a buffet and Grady proceeds to eat half of it. Putting his empty plate on the side, he asks Stensland what his plans are now that he is unemployed. Stensland wants a company that makes him a lot of money, although he isn't sure what the company will be. He wants a vintage Cadillac with an original leather interior, a house on the water, and many other unrealistic things. Grady stops him mid-sentence and advises him to adopt more realistic ambitions. However, Stensland blames it on being a Pisces, and that makes Grady cringe. Grady tries to get Stensland back to dating, but he is so stoked about that. He doesn't want to meet women at a bar because the music is too loud and he can't make conversation. But Grady claims that he doesn't need to make conversation in the club. The only questions he should be wondering are, what are we drinking and where are we humping? Coming back home, Grady goes to take a shower while Stensland watches Dawson's Creek on TV. After showering, Grady comes out to inform Stensland that he had wasted the whole bottle of Mr. Bubbles. He asks Stensland what he's watching and he informs him that it's indeed a romantic show. Grady looks at him with an annoyed face and says that they're not watching a romantic show but some sporting event with cars crashing. Stensland gets annoyed and asks Grady whether he bosses Morgan around like that, but Grady reveals that they don't watch TV together. Stensland thinks that marriage is all about coming together to watch TV before bed, but Grady tells him that he needs to be a bit more realistic. The bell interrupts their conversation and Stensland goes to answer it. He is shocked to see Morgan standing in front of him, but she lets him know that she only came to check if he's alive. Stensland gets the slightest hope that he could be with Morgan again, as he thinks that her coming to check on him is because she cares. She lets him know that's not the case and heads her way when she hears Grady's voice. Coming into the apartment, she sees Grady sitting on the couch in a robe. He asks her what she's doing there and she says that she came to check whether he really killed Stensland. Grady lets her know that he's living with Stensland because they've bonded over their mutual hatred of her. Stensland chimes in to make it clear that he doesn't hate Morgan, but Grady cuts him off. He reminds him that Morgan lied to him and broke his heart, and even advises him to grow some balls. Grady's encouragement gets to Stensland and he throws his rage at Morgan. Morgan, I'm really pissed at you. You're very pretty, but you're a liar. Get a load of this, sister. Me and this fella right here, we're taking a long Morgan vacation, and if you don't like it, then you can just head out and find yourself another boy toy, is what Stensland screams at Morgan before high-fiving Grady. Morgan is in disbelief, but she turns to her husband to explain. She claims that she didn't know what to do, they were already losing touch, and she let him know that, but he ignored her. He blew off therapy and drifted away from her, leaving her wandering for affection and love. Is this BBC World News? What he says to her pisses her off even more. Seriously, she reminds him that they're talking about their marriage. She asks him to get his stuff and come back to the house. He declines her offer and says that he will be staying with Stensland for a while. Morgan leaves as tears start forming in her eyes. Stensland feels awful. He doesn't like the fact that he yelled at her, so he goes to his room to calm down. But Grady forces him to a nightclub. They order drinks at the bar and Grady sets a strategy for Stensland's future girlfriend. He suggests they look for a girl with a good body and a pretty face, but Stensland is more about intelligence, sense of self, and fashion. The end game is to get them so fashion is not an important factor, but personality is. That way Stensland can see if the girl wants to hook up. Grady reminds him to scan the room and to keep drinking the rocket liquid before he lets him disappear into the crowd. After looking around, Stensland spots a pretty blonde girl sitting by herself. He approaches her and asks what she's drinking. She is drinking Harim Mugger, a drink that has almost every alcohol in it. Things start to get weird when she reveals why she's drinking it. She admits that she ordered it because it smells like an antifungal shampoo she used to wash her pony with. Her pony, Gingerbell, had a fungal skin infection called rain rot, and because she used to cuddle with it, she got the skin infection as well. She starts explaining that she can't grow hair on her left armpit and half her pubic region when Stensland decides that he's had enough. Coming back to the bar, he complains about the horrible conversation and claims that he would never get a girlfriend. Surprisingly, Grady knows what rain rot is, and he assures Stensland that it's nothing to worry about. He encourages him to go back out there, but little does he know what's waiting for him. Grady orders a shot of the cheapest tequila they have and begins his plan. Tired of trying and failing, Stensland sits at a booth with a worry on his mind. The girl next to him taps his shoulder and gives him a flirty look, before rudely asking him to get off of her $700 jacket. The guys next to her start insulting Stensland, so Grady comes to them and with a turned back, insults the lady in an Irish accent, making them believe that Stensland has said that. Grady adds fuel to the fire, and the guy, who is way bigger than Stensland, invites him outside for a fight. Stensland is screwed and blames Grady for it. Going outside, Grady assures him that he needs the fight as violence is good for a guy. He advises him to use the anger from being bullied his whole life and to do something about it. They start punching each other, and Stensland keeps seeing his childhood bully in front of him. It isn't until he sees Morgan in front of him that he throws a punch at the guy as well. Excited about defending himself, Stensland turns to look at Grady when the guy punches him again, knocking him out. Waking up, Stensland sees Morgan by his side. He starts talking like Grady and even notices having the same mustache as him. "Stensland, you punched me in the face," says Morgan before he hears yodeling. Turning to the side, he sees Hannah in Swiss traditional clothes, offering him a smoke. He stares at her with desire and compliments the way she looks before waking up in the real world. Going into the bathroom, he notices his note painted over on the wall, white paint still dripping from it. He decides to reconnect with his old roommate and lets him know all about his dream. His friend is confused as to how Stensland did all of those things only 48 hours after he moved out. He had never seen him do such scandalous things and believed that Stensland is unleashing his radness. Stensland claims that it's not radness, but rather Grady that needs to be kicked out. His roommate believes that the fun has gotten into his life because he escaped it when he was in his 20s, and he thinks that it's not a problem because Grady is paying for everything. After having breakfast with his roommate, Stensland walks back home. Out of the distance, Hannah spots him and tries to hide, but he finds her either way. She tries to walk away but he follows her, apologizing for storming into the office. She notices his purple eye and he tells her about the fight. Getting closer to him, she admits to seeing him in a different light and even wanting him. Confused, he asks her if she's for real, and she tells him no and to go away. Still, he follows her into the building, talking nonstop. Getting to her desk, she compares Stensland to a rash. Both of them give her a headache, nausea, and make her skin crawl. Stensland jokes about them being symptoms of love, but she assures him that they aren't. He asks to speak to Morgan, but she tells him that she's in a meeting. After the meeting finishes, Stensland walks into the office and complains to Morgan about her husband not wanting to go out anymore and act like a party animal. Stensland lets Morgan know what her husband is trying to do. Grady is going every night, looking for young attractive girls to have intercourse with. Morgan doesn't believe him, but he starts screaming that Grady is the wrong guy for her. Finally, Hannah kicks Stensland out, but she has another problem on her hands. Morgan wants to talk to Grady, but Hannah stops her and advises her to let him have all the fun in the world because he would be coming back eventually. As usual, Stensland meets his screaming landlord in the hallway before entering his apartment. Walking in, he sees Grady pouring 2 shots. He lets him know that it is a ladies' night down at the bar, and before their Uber arrives, they should have some pre-game shots. Stensland, tired of it all, asks him whether they can stay in and watch TV because his head's hurting from the previous night. Grady doesn't listen to him and even threatens to expose Stensland for threatening his wife for $15,000. Stensland doesn't have any other choice but to listen to the old man. That same night, Morgan can be seen out with her assistant Hannah. She downed a couple of shots and started talking about how she had met Grady. She had been hiding from her boss when Grady found her. His pep talk about her opening her own firm was all Morgan needed at that period. It motivated her to pour hummus all over his boss, but what really impressed her is how Grady had handled the situation at the station. After leaving the station, they had gotten together and have been together ever since. By the time she finishes her story, every waiter in the bar had come to listen to it. Hannah snaps her back to reality and lets her know that the bartender had asked her whether she wants chicken in her nachos. The boys arrive at a club and go straight to the bar. Grady orders them a McCoynish, a drink that's quadruple distilled, with 92% alcohol. Stenslin takes a shot and finds it hard to breathe after the drink burns his insides. Being gullible, he continues to take more shots of the drink as Grady lies to him that the more you drink the less he'll feel them. As the night goes by, he dances like crazy and even falls asleep at one point, after drinking too much. In the morning, we can see that Grady is doing just fine while Stenslin is throwing his guts up. As time passes, the duo can be seen at more parties. Drinking tons of alcohol seems to be only affecting Stenslin as Grady is doing better than ever. They do the most bizarre things together. Well, Stenslin does them because Grady is a respectful lawyer, however, he is always by his side. Complaining that he has had more alcohol than oxygen, Stenslin leans back comfortably in the taxi. He excitedly tells Grady that he can't wait to get back home and put on his jammies, but he cuts him off by telling the taxi driver to drop them off at a college campus. At the party, Stenslin is forced to drink beer upside down. He drops to the ground, not being able to finish drinking, and angrily tells everyone to shut up. He shames the people there and calls them alcoholics as they don't know how to have fun without being drunk. Making a stand, he tries to convince people that they don't need to be party animals to be cool. Silence fills the room before a random guy shouts out, "Let's make him drink from the hobo's boot." Knowing that he's in trouble, Stenslin tries to decline the offer but ends up drinking from the boot anyway. Grady carries a slightly passed out Stenslin out of the party as he lets him know that they will be attending another party the next evening. In the taxi, Grady asks the driver to make a turn and they get to Morgan's house. Looking at her from the windows, he gets saddened because their relationship isn't the same anymore. She notices a taxi car outside her house, so she gets close to the window to see who it is, but Grady tells the driver to drive off before she gets the chance to see him. As always, Stenslin goes to soft solutions, but this time he is hiding from Grady. Hannah spots him sleeping on the couch while shopping for herself there, so she approaches him. Waking him up, she asks him why he's at Soft Solutions, and he tells her that it's his favorite place, because it's clean and comfortable, and the staff is warm-hearted. She tries to leave but he stops her and reminds her that they need to talk. Convincing her to sit down with him, Stenslin asks her what she's doing there. She's there to return something from Morgan, and as it turns out, it's a gift Stenslin gave to her. He reminisces about the time he met her there. He had thought that she was so beautiful and fell for her immediately because he wanted a girlfriend. Hannah sighs in awe and even proceeds to give him some advice when looking for a girlfriend. Stenslin comes to the conclusion that he needs to kick both Morgan and Grady out of his life, but doesn't see a possible way of doing so. Hannah asks him what his part is in helping Grady get a revenge girl, and that's when Stenslin realizes that he is the problem. Coming back home, he calls out for Grady to get ready but doesn't see him there. A note lies on the kitchen counter with Grady's signature on it. Picking it up, Stenslin reads that Grady will be at the office, and realizes that his last chance is that same night. He prepares to finally win the revenge game and get rid of Grady. Stenslin gets ready, he showers, shaves, and even puts on one of Grady's suits. Putting the suit on, Stenslin gets an incredible dose of confidence and believes that nothing can stop him. Walking into Grady's building, he spots him working in his office. With the motivational speech he had prepared for Grady, he convinces him to finish what he had started. For the first time in a week, Grady and Stenslin come back to the apartment with two gorgeous ladies. Stenslin continues his act of confidence to charm the ladies, but he notices Grady's quiet, which is unusual. He tells him to get out of his thoughts and join the ladies for some fun. Grady gets up and they all stand together until one of the ladies tries to put some music on. She gets a record player from Billy Ocean and Stenslin starts screaming at her not to play that record. Even though he is hesitant, he admits that his music makes him emotional as it brings him back to his childhood love, who inspired him to listen to Billy Ocean. Unfortunately, the girl had declined his invitation to the tropical dance, and that broke his heart. They get drunk and start dancing to Billy Ocean's music, despite Stenslin's claims. He can be seen dancing the most out of the group and having the time of his life. As he's dancing, Grady sits down and one of the girls sits down next to him. The girl dancing with Stenslin sees that and sits with Grady as well. The revenge finally happens as Grady heads to the bedroom with the beautiful brunette. Thinking that the other girl's interested in him, Stenslin sits down to her and tries to kiss her, but he notices that she's upset. She starts insulting her friend for getting with Grady before she could. She claims that she's tired of her getting the guy she wants, and she ends up with dorks like Stenslin. Stenslin actually helps her get her point out as he insults himself, saying the words that she would have said. The girl starts crying and runs to the bathroom. Stenslin is devastated as he stares in front of him with a blank expression. The next morning comes and Morgan gets a call from Grady. He admits to sleeping with a young woman and asks her how it feels. She admits that she feels horrible before hanging up the call and crying to herself. Stenslin sits in front of the entrance of Soft Solutions when the store manager comes and opens it. He sits in a comfortable chair when a customer approaches him, asking for something. Saying that he doesn't work there, Stenslin looks up and sees Billy Ocean in front of him. He tells Billy's that he had messed up. He now realizes that he should have encouraged Grady to fight for Morgan, not some young girl at a club. Billy's reminds him of one of his songs, It's Never Too Late to Try, and encourages him to fix the situation. Coming back to his senses, he realizes that he had imagined it all as a guy looking like Billy Ocean's asking him for love seats. Despite not working there, Stensland shows some love seats to the man, and the managers overhear them. Over at the office, Morgan can be seen stress-eating when Hannah catches her. She tells Hannah that Grady had completed his revenge act. Hannah asks her to calm down and expects Grady to come crawling at her in no time, as he's finally come to his senses. Morgan argues back, saying that there's no way that she would forgive him, even if he were to fall on his knees. Over at the building, Grady pays the landlord a couple months in advance for Stensland before he puts his suitcases in his car. While doing so, Stensland comes back from Soft Solutions and reveals that he had gotten a job there. He asks Grady whether he slept with Samantha, and Grady admits that he couldn't do it having Morgan on his mind. Stensland starts yelling at him to go back home and fix their marriage because everything that's happening to them is his fault. Grady thinks that everything is different, but Stensland claims that their love's just been tested, and they still love each other. He thanks him for the advice but claims that it would never work out, as he gets into his car. Not knowing any other way of fixing their relationship, Stensland tries to make Grady jealous by graphically explaining what he's going to do to his wife. His plan works out as Grady starts chasing him, trying to stop him from going to Morgan's office. Running through people's backyards and houses, they finally get to the building, but the elevator closes before Grady could get in. Still, he makes it just in time and pins Stensland against the wall and warns him that he's finally going to get the ass-kicking he deserves. The whole time, everyone in Morgan's meeting could hear them. Morgan apologizes to the people there and reschedules the meeting for some other time. Everyone leaves, and Stensland takes the chance to let Morgan know that Grady has come to apologize. Seeing him turn into a love wolf made Stensland realize that he is deeply in love with her. Hannah comes in and drags Stensland out, so the couple could talk. Grady admits to not sleeping with anyone and apologizes for screwing up their marriage. He had neglected and abandoned his wife. The effect of living with Stensland can be noticed in Grady, as he starts explaining in the same manner as him that their love had been tested, but he believes that they can get back together. Morgan laughs in confusion and apologizes as well. Their relationship is finally replenished. Stensland and Hannah walk away from the office after eavesdropping and finding out that everything's okay. Hannah admits that she's impressed, but Stensland thinks that Grady had subconsciously known that he was trying to get him to the office. She walks him out of the building and he stands in front of her, claiming that his work is done. "You're welcome," is what Stensland says before kissing Hannah and heading his way. Grady and Morgan come running after him, but he has already taken off. They wanted to thank him, but he was on his way. Morgan thinks that he looks different. Something has changed about him. Grady chimes in and repeats the motivational speech that was once written on Stensland's bathroom wall. Like a big, beautiful condor that people would respect and fear. "I can't believe that used to be Stensland," they'll say. "I can't believe that used to be Stensland."